Okay, well, good afternoon, comrades and friends, and welcome to this meeting of the Korean Friendship Association of the UK West of England, which is both a real live meeting and we're also live streaming it on StreamYard and YouTube. So warmly welcome everybody who's here in person participating and those who are watching on the live stream. And those who are new to KFA, Korean Friendship Association was founded in November 2000 by Comrade Alejandro Caldebenos with the purpose of defending people's Korea and showing the reality of socialist construction in the DPRK to the wider public. And we in KFA UK say defending people's Korea with no ifs or buts. That's what we say. And we do this for a number of ways, particularly working online, but also holding meetings like this. This is the second time we've held a meeting in Taunton in the west of England. We previously had one in October. We're committed to holding meetings outside London, because some people say, oh, KFA, it's just in London, it's people holding meetings in London. That's not true. We will travel to any town where KFA members can find us a venue to hold a meeting. We will hold the meeting there. We've had meetings in the past on Stoke-on-Trent, in Liverpool, in Derby, in Glasgow, and in Manchester. And I say, we go to any place in the UK to organise a meeting. This afternoon, I'll be giving a presentation on defending people's Korea, exposing the lies of the mainstream media. Comrade Alan Bollen, who is head of KFA UK in the west of England, also editor of our online journal, People's Korea Today, and organisation secretary for KFA UK, is going to speak on the Workers' Party of Korea Revolutionary Vanguard. And we have a special guest here, Comrade Marcel van Stralen, chairman of KFA in the Netherlands, which we've recently re-established. I'd just point out that KFA is a worldwide association, headquartered in Spain, but with branches in many different countries, even the USA, believe it or not. Right behind Emily Lines there in the US, all the time new people are joining KFA, and we're establishing new branches. So, cutting to the chase, I'm going to give my presentation about defending people's Korea and exposing the lies of the mainstream media, because that's our core purpose with KFA. That's why we're here. That's why we organise meetings. That's why we organise live streams. That's why we picket the BBC, the British Brainwashing Corporation. That's why we picket the South Korean Embassy and the US Embassy. We're defending people's Korea, and we're exposing the lies and demonisation. There is no doubt that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK for short, or People's Korea as I prefer to call it, or Juche Korea, is one of the most demonised countries in the whole world. In fact, until the Russia-Ukraine war started and the imperialists turned on Russia, the DPRK was number one target, the most demonized country in the world, with a massive propaganda machine working 24/7 against the DPRK. Do a search on Google and you will find hundreds and hundreds of anti-DPRK articles, people talking defectors, blah, 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 human rights, blah, blah. That's the propaganda machine that's against the DPRK. Now, I'm not here to discuss the rights and wrongs of the Ukraine war, but the vilification of both Russia and the DPRK illustrates that any country asserting itself against the imperialist West, any country standing up for its rights, and any country going its own way will face the wrath of the imperialists and an unending torrent of lies and slanders. People's Korea also faces demonisation and vilification because it is a genuine socialist country. Despite the raging winds of anti-socialism, then the new wave of postmodernist anti-communism and the setbacks that have occurred in the last 30 years, the DPRK is maintaining socialist principles. Moreover, despite 60 years of sanctions and blockades, plus natural disasters, the DPRK is implementing popular welfare policies such as free education, free medical care, and free housing without taking even a penny from its citizens in tax. Yes, People's Korea abolished taxation in March 1974. Just to bring things up to speed, recently The Guardian published an article about the DPRK, and also a so-called health expert, a YouTube health expert, Dr. John Campbell, who I'd never heard of before, made a video which severely exaggerated and distorted the apparent outbreak of COVID-19 in the DPRK. The Guardian piece, when it was examined, turned out to be a syndicated article from a French imperialist news agency, Agence France Presse. And, I point out, yes, France is an imperialist country. It's got troops in many African countries exploiting and oppressing the African people. And of course, the Asia-Pacific editor of Agence France Presse is none other than Oliver Hoffman, the former chief editor of the CIA fake news and disinformation website, NK News. More about them later. And Hoffman was responsible for a particularly vile and slanderous attack on KFA UK 3 years ago. And, I'd also sort of mention, departing a bit from my script here, that also nearly 10 years ago, Oliver Hoffman illegally filmed a KFA UK picket of the South Korean embassy, harassed people, and worse still, brought a so-called defector to the picket, which could have put some of the more elderly people at that picket in danger of physical violence. This is the sort of person who is against the DPRK and who's responsible for the disinformation about the DPRK. And I think it's really lame that The Guardian, which, many liberals look up to and read, is actually just copying and pasting syndicated articles from imperialist news agencies rather than actually doing proper journalism and proper reporting. Many mainstream media stories on the DPRK are usually copies of syndicated articles, which in turn are copies of stories circulated by South Korea and the US Central Intelligence Agency. The AFP article in The Guardian uses South Korean sources and quotes an official of the South Korean Sejong Institute, which is an entity devoted entirely to anti-DPRK propaganda and had been set up by the South Korean puppet regime in the 1980s. Turning black into white, The Guardian ludicrously asserts that the DPRK has, quote-unquote, one of the worst public health systems in the world. Well, clearly the Guardian reporter can't be living in the UK. Nothing could be further from the truth. In the DPRK, free medical care was introduced for factory and office workers in 1947, and in 1953, universal free medical care was introduced in the DPRK. Everyone receives free medical care, and this is legally guaranteed. By the 1960s, the DPRK had 16 doctors per 10,000 people, very high level. By 2017, according to the World Bank, the DPRK had 3.7 doctors per 1,000 people. This was higher than South Korea, which had only 2.4 doctors per 1,000 people. And of course, medical care in South Korea is not free, you have to pay for it. The World Bank also said that the number of hospital beds per 1,000 in the DPRK was 13.2 per 1,000 compared to 2.9 beds per 1,000 in the UK. Quite a big difference, isn't it? So basically, the DPRK actually has 4.55 times the number of hospital beds per 1,000 than the UK. How on earth can they say that DPRK has one of the worst public health systems in the world? This is just a barefaced lie. And we can add that people in the DPRK benefit from the section doctor system, in which doctors actually go to visit people in their localities and workplaces. Ironically, in the UK, as I think everybody here knows, it's often impossible to actually see a doctor in person. It's all online consultations and phone calls and dumbing down, and this has become the pattern for the UK, and I think it's paving the way for the eventual privatisation of the health service in the UK, and where people will be expected to pay for a doctor. But that's another subject. And the other sort of nasty propaganda piece was this video by Dr. John Campbell, who's a sort of YouTube health expert, and although some people highly respect his work, I mean, he's clearly no friend of any socialist country. And he, followed a similar pattern to The Guardian. And of course, he's not qualified to speak to the DPRK because he's never even set foot in the DPRK even once. This is a bit reminiscent of George Orwell writing a novel, Animal Farm, supposedly about the USSR. And of course, Orwell never actually visited the USSR once. But anyway, Campbell, titled his video "Disaster in North Korea," failing to use the correct title of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or People's Korea. You know, and whilst the outbreak of the Omicron variant in the DPRK does constitute an upheaval and a matter of grave concern, you know, it should be pointed out that firstly, the DPRK was totally free from COVID-19 for over, you know, for more than 2 years, you know, 2 years, 3 months. And, you know, this was because they closed the border. And the other thing, you know, should be pointed out, is that Omicron is actually a less serious form of COVID-19. And, you know, I checked this out, and I actually looked up the Yale medicine website, and it said as as quoted, the good news is that so far BA.12.1 does not appear to cause severe illness and death, quote unquote. The DPRK actually took timely and prompt measures once the Omicron variant was detected. You know, the army were mobilised to fight it. Army medics were sent in, and also a strict sort of quarantine system was imposed, and you know, very rigorous disinfection of you know, all areas in the DPRK. And you know, if you go on our KFA UK Facebook page, different DPRK websites such as DPRK Today, different YouTube channels, you'll see pictures of people in decontamination suits spraying disinfection. You didn't get that in the UK when COVID-19 actually, you know, broke out. And it should be noted that the death toll from COVID-19 in the DPRK is actually very low. It's only, I think about last time I saw figures, it was about 68 people. Now compare that to over 23,000 in South Korea. So I think Dr. Campbell is clearly looking at the wrong part of Korea when he's talking about a disaster or catastrophe from COVID-19. Dr. Campbell also resorts to Orientalist and racist rhetoric when he calls the population of the DPRK, and I strongly emphasise the quotation marks here, naive. And he may well say I'm taking it out of context, but it's a fact that ever since the global pandemic started 2 years ago, the DPRK carried out mass health education and warns people continuously about the dangers of COVID-19 and the need for disinfection and etc. You know, Campbell also got a figure wrong. He said as of the 16th of May, only 81,400 people had fully recovered, but in fact the number was 648,000. You know, and this, I no doubt he would say, it was a mistake, but this is an example of the kind of lies that the mainstream media are pushing about the DPRK. And for his sources, he cites an American neocon academic based in South Korea, and also, wait for it, defectors. You know, I'll be saying a little bit more about Western liberal academics in South Korea later. And as we all know, stories from defectors have been repeatedly debunked, have been repeatedly proved false. We've all heard, how Yomi Park, dare I mention the woman's name, is saying that people in the DPRK got made to push trains uphill. Of course, someone actually went and researched that, did the arithmetic, and of course it's physically impossible to pull a loaded train up a hill. But I mean, this, the tabloid media, particularly, and a lot of internet sites are sort of publishing this rubbish day after day, and some people believe it. The fact of the matter was the DPRK did more than any other country to prevent the inroads of the global pandemic health crisis into the country. It closed its borders, and they stayed shut for 2 years. And I personally, and this is personal view, not necessarily a view of KFA UK, I personally found it a bit odd and curious that COVID-19 was able to get into the DPRK with the border shut. Perhaps at some point in the future the DPRK may comment in detail about this. However, in my view, there's the possibility that the US and South Korea deliberately spread the virus into the DPRK. And it's a coincidence that a few weeks before the outbreak was reported in the DPRK, defectors staying in South Korea claimed to have flown balloons containing anti-DPRK propaganda leaflets into the DPRK. Did the balloons actually contain something else other than propaganda leaflets? And of course, the US used germ warfare, biological warfare against the DPRK during the Fatherland Liberation War in the 1950s. Campbell blames the DPRK over the issue of vaccination, but the Omicron variant in other countries spread among those who had been vaccinated. So it probably didn't make much difference whether people in the DPRK had been vaccinated or not. The DPRK, in my opinion, correctly rejected the fake humanitarian aid of imperialism aimed at destroying the socialist system. He rejected the unsafe vaccines produced by the big pharma capitalist monopolies of the imperialist world. And I suspect the DPRK will be hated even more because it is solving the COVID-19 outbreak without these vaccines. And Campbell resorts to old anti-DPRK tropes about malnutrition. How come developed countries like the US and UK had high rates of COVID-19? Does it in fact mean that those US and UK have high rates of malnutrition as they have high rates of COVID-19? And in 2021, the director of the Research Institute for Nutrition Care of Children in the DPRK pointed out as follows: in our country, nutrition care of our children is deemed a top priority affair, quote unquote. And, space doesn't permit us to deal with all the allegations and assertions of Campbell, but where I finally take issue with Campbell is that he also claimed that the outbreak was caused by poor housing in the DPRK. This is a lie. During the past 10 years, there has been massive housing construction in the DPRK with whole new streets and even cities built. And this year in April, 10,000 new flats, yes, 10,000 new flats were completed in the Songhua area of Pyongyang, and another 10,000 are under construction in the Hwasong area of Pyongyang. And this is a remarkable achievement when you think about the sanctions against the DPRK. And housing is virtually free of charge in the DPRK. There's no homeless people. And I speak as one, I've been across Pyongyang very late at night, been through all the subways, it's a long story, I can tell it to people on another occasion, but, I saw that there was no homeless people sleeping in subways. My friend from the Netherlands has been staying in a particular London borough, and he is shocked by the amount of people actually begging and the number of homeless people on the streets, in the so-called wealthy and developed country. Anyway, the above are just typical of some of the lies told about people's career. The BBC, or as we like to call it, the British Brainwashing Corporation, consistently demonises and smears the DPRK by using cliches like impoverished, totalitarian, isolated. Rather than being impoverished, DPRK has a rapidly growing economy. It is a launcher of satellites, and it is a people-orientated society where the resources are spent on people's welfare, such as, as said above, free housing. And rather than being isolated, it has relations, diplomatic relations, with over 100 countries, including even Britain, would you believe? And DPRK is an active participant in a number of international organisations. As I say, People's Korea is a country that abolished taxation in 1974, yet has free education, free healthcare and virtually free education. It's a society free from knife crime. It's safe to walk about the streets at night in the DPRK. The same cannot be said of Britain. And as for the US is a society which cannot even keep its own school children safe. A few days ago there was the appalling massacre at a school in the US, and to me that shows that the US is a corrupt and depraved and decadent society. It's a civilization in terminal decline, whereas People's Korea represents a new civilization and a rising civilization. The torrent of falsehood, myths and lies about the DPRK serve to create an atmosphere in which a war against the DPRK could be justified, or regime change in the DPRK. They are part and parcel of the psychological warfare against US imperialism, against the socialist system of the DPRK and the Juche idea. Now let's look where some of this propaganda comes from. And we've got the very useful graphic on the screen, which shows you, the networks of anti-DPRK propaganda and the actual sources of it. Now, much of the misinformation comes from the South Korean puppet propaganda machine, which is massive. This is then recycled by the Western mainstream media, or if you like, the bourgeois or imperialist media. And in some cases, you know, they actually very cynically print stories they know aren't true. You know, like people being executed, only for a few months later they turn up alive and well. You know, recently in the DPRK, Ri Yong Gil was appointed Marshal of the DPRK. Nothing remarkable about that, you might say. But 2016, the BBC website carried an article saying that he'd been executed. So, I mean, doing very well, you know, for a dead person. You know, he's, you know, got promoted to the rank of Marshal. You know, there's a joke in KFA circles, you know, that Duce can resurrect the dead. You know, DPRK can resurrect people. And this is, you know, the kind of rubbish they are sort of, you know, saying about the DPRK. And then you have shadowy outfits and think tanks that are closely linked to the US Central Intelligence Agency and also the South Korean National Intelligence Service and some other Western intelligence services like MI6, MI5, possibly the Mossad as well. And one example is NK News, an internet-based news service, which includes on its staff former US and South Korean army officers. The head and founder of NK News, Chado Carroll, who even looks like a CIA agent or a Mormon, was someone who worked for the CIA-linked Marshall Fund. And O'Carroll is quite the international man of mystery. No one's actually been able to pin down what his real nationality is. You know, sometimes it's apparently British, sometimes it's American, and sometimes it's Irish. So, you know, quite a mysterious figure. And he's also linked to a shadowy NGO called the House of the Rising Stars. O'Carroll in the past used the name Tad Farrell, you know, showing that, you know, he uses false identities. And another key figure in NK News, one of the original founders of it, was Hamish MacDonald, and he is now with the Royal United Services Institute, and was also a researcher for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Join up the dots, as they say, and you'll see what it is. NK News operates out of South Korea and is registered in a US tax haven in Delaware, where in the past CIA front companies were registered. NK News has been shown to receive funding from the US Army Pacific Command and the US Department of Defense. It's important to expose NK News because it is a major source of anti-DPRK propaganda. And often stories first appearing in NK News will then appear in The Guardian or even the Mail and other sort of news outlets. You know, it is like the source of anti-DPRK propaganda. You know, in fact, it's, you know, it's a way for the CIA, South Korean National Intelligence Service, and different Western intelligence services to pump fake news about the DPRK into the media. So, you know, I think someone rightly described it as a sort of pipeline. You know, you can think of NK News as the oil refinery and the sort of mainstream media as the petrol stations. And secondly, quite incredibly, NK News likes to brand itself as an independent source, quote unquote. So it's used by the mainstream media to provide a fig leaf of balance. And I've even come across, sadly, people who actually thought that NK News is an official DPRK news outlet. And of course, you know, it is anything but, and it is not an independent source at all. And, you know, I would say to people, you know, just think of the white helmets, think of Bellingcat. Well, that is, NK News is a very similar outfit to them, you know, no matter how much they might try to deny it or laugh it off. So, you know, we must expose NK News. Now, it's, you know, hard to sort of list every anti-DPRK propaganda outfits. You know, there's a number of them, and, you know, they've got various guises. You know, some, such as a Singapore-based NGO, even claim they're helping the DPRK, and the so-called help they're offering to the DPRK is to try and teach them how to restore capitalism in the DPRK, how to create a class of businessmen. And, you know, that's the last thing the DPRK needs. You know, they don't need that kind of help at all. And one famous anti-sort of DPRK outlet is called Link, or Liberty in North Korea. It operates a lot in universities. It's actively trying to recruit in UK universities. And a few years ago, I was looking at their website and studying it, and it said their revenue had increased by 27%, but the expenditure increased by 49%. Big gap, 22% adrift. So clearly, someone is bankrolling them. You know, there's a shortfall. This shortfall is being met from somewhere. And it's not hard to guess where this would come from. You know, it comes from the CIA, South Korean National Intelligence Service, and US multinationals and wealthy right-wingers in various Western countries. I would also call out a number of academics for spreading slanders about the DPRK. One example is Professor Hazel Smith, who back in the 80s was a Trotskyite Labour councillor in Lambeth, that she sort of, you know, reinvented herself as a, you know, as a sort of expert on the DPRK. She's written a number of very anti-DPRK books, such as Hungry for Peace, you know, implying that, you know, everybody in the DPRK was starving and, you know, the DPRK was begging for US aid. You know, it's just terrible slander against socialism and Duke shape. She once, I think, attacked the KFA, and significantly, she got awarded a medal by the US. And I think George Bush the older, you know, the one who died, awarded her the medal. And for many years, liberal academics were bribed by South Korea, sometimes given teaching jobs in South Korea, and even South Korean wives or mistresses. And these people sort of form a sort of army of anti-DPRK experts, and as I said earlier at the beginning, when the media are talking about the DPRK, one of these will be sort of wheeled out. Professor so-and-so, what do you think of what's happened in North Korea recently? And it'd be blah blah blah, just parroting what the South Koreans or the Americans have told them. So that's a key part of the anti-DPRK propaganda. And some UK universities have actually received funding from South Korea. So, when some people say, but why are sort of academics and intellectuals so hostile to the DPRK? Why do they take part in these propaganda campaigns? That is the reason why it's happening. So to conclude, how can you defend People's Korea? We are, in the Korean Friendship Association of the UK, are the most active and consistent defenders of People's Korea in the UK. We believe in defending People's Korea with no ifs and buts. We do what it says on the tin and defend the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, whether it is on the internet, Facebook or other social media, or even on the streets, or even in front of the BBC, the South Korean Public Embassy, or the US Embassy. That's what we do. And I think what matters most is that people actively defend the DPRK. And, we don't make half-hearted statements. We don't tolerate two-faced people or fake friends in our ranks, but we wholeheartedly support People's Korea and the independence of the DPRK and the socialist system. We appeal to all honest-minded and true friends of People's Korea to join KFA. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any questions? Anyone would like to ask anything about the lecture being done?
Right. So,
All right.
anyone here got any questions or perhaps a short contribution? We can perhaps take one or two from the live stream here. Yeah, if people can hear clearly on the live stream, if you want to drop in, put in a few questions, I'll answer a simple question. How can someone join the KFA? Well, go to the website www.korea-dpr.com and go to the section where it says membership, and you'll find a link there, a form, online form. Or if you're here in the UK, just email me at uk@korea-dpr.com or duce007@gmail. Email me and we can enrol you. Joining is very simple. Basic membership is free of charge. We don't close our doors. We're not an elitist body. We're not, simply for businessmen or very wealthy people. We welcome ordinary people to our ranks. We do, suggest, if you do have surplus money, which seems to be very rare in these days of high inflation, we do suggest you make donations, and a way of supporting KFA is to buy one of the membership cards. UK KFA also has some merchandise. We've got T-shirts, and we've also got our own publishing program. Okay, next question, please. Anyone else want to ask a question on the chat? Chris, is there anything you'd like to ask or want to say?
One of the issues that always seems to be coming up is the death toll from the intervention in the 1950s. There's no mention, millions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was up to 2 million people in the DPRK, civilians. That's not for military. And a lot of people massacred. And, you know, I myself visited the Sinchon Museum, which serves both as a monument to the people killed in Sinchon County by the US and class enemies, and also as a centre for anti-US education. And Sinchon is the place where 35,383 people were killed in the space of 6 weeks by the US occupiers. You know, it's quite emotional visiting there. You know, it's a bit like Auschwitz, and you can actually meet a massacre survivor who survived the massacre because all the dead bodies fell on top of him when he was about a 5-year-old. But the dead bodies actually protected him. You know, he works as a lecturer at the museum. But yeah, I mean, the death toll was huge. And it may be up to 4 million for both parts of Korea. Because the US also carried out a lot of massacres in South Korea. You know, they were trying to, according to them, wipe out KFA units that were behind their lines and wipe out South Korean communists and guerrillas. And, you know, the death toll is, yeah, as you say, it's very big. The figures I saw from the DPRK, it was nearly 2 million in the DPRK killed, but I mean, it is a good point. Right, okay, some more questions have come up on the chat. Firstly, is North Korea open for tourists at the moment? No, the border has been closed since late January 2020. I cannot say when it will be opened. I think, you know, this latest occurrence will probably mean that it will be put back. Maybe next year it will be open. There will certainly be, if it is open next year, the DPRK will be inviting many people for the celebrations of the 70th anniversary of the victory in the Great Fatherland Liberation War, which is July 27th. I would like to ask you, is it true it is forbidden to bring a Bible into the DPRK? As far as I know, it is not. And in fact, a Korean language version of the Bible is available in the DPRK for those who choose to believe in God. And the Constitution in the DPRK actually guarantees the freedom of religious worship, except there is a proviso that it mustn't be used to bring in foreign imperialist influence into the country. And the DPRK has 3 different religions present in the DPRK: Christianity, Buddhism and Chondoism. and there's three different Christian churches: Catholic Church, Protestant Church, which is actually quite big, and a Russian Orthodox Church. And I myself, I visited the Catholic Church in the east of Pyongyang. And just to sort of quickly answer the related question about, mosque in Pyongyang, the mosque is in the grounds of the Iranian embassy. It's on what is Iranian soil. There is no actual mosque on DPRK soil because there were no Muslim believers in the DPRK traditionally. As I said, there was three different religions: Christianity, Buddhism, which obviously has a very long history in Korea, and also what's not known outside Korea is also the religion of Chondoism, or the Heavenly Way believers, which it's got elements of paganism in it, worshipping elements and so on. And to just look at the other questions. Yeah, I think I've answered the point about when the DPRK will be welcoming tourists, and about organisations offering travel to the DPRK. Well, obviously the number one is KFA itself. KFA International organised delegations, which we will resume doing so once the borders open, and individual or national KFA branches can organise delegations, and of course there are commercial companies offering tours to the DPRK, but we do not make recommendations about commercial companies because they are separate from KFA. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We do not endorse any particular travel company, and we do not accept advertising from them. Right, okay. Detailed questions here. Who are the allies of the DPRK in the Middle East? Well, clearly, Iran is, and Syria. There's treaties with both countries. There's also friendly relations with Egypt, which go back to the period of Colonel Nasser. There was very good relations with Egypt. The DPRK actually sent pilots of the Korean People's Army Air Force to fight in the 1973 Mideast War against the Zionists. Korean planes flew with the Egyptian Air Force, and they also gave Okay, sorry about that. Slight technical difficulty. We're back now. Hope everyone can hear. Can people in the live stream just say whether they can hear or not? Well, no one's indicating. Don't know if you can check on the phone that it's working.
Mine is off.
Let me just check.
Oh, yes.
It is?
Oh,
Yes, that's fine.
Right, great. Thank you. Great. Working. Sorry about that. A minor technical blip. We're working off Wi-Fi here. You know, we're in a venue in Taunton. Right, everyone can. Well, you know, someone's asked about warm beer. I think the thing to remember is that he didn't die in the DPRK. He died in an American hospital after being returned to the US by a humanitarian initiative of the DPRK. The US actually did nothing to secure his release. Warmbier actually confessed to committing a crime against the DPRK. You know, he was sneaking about a hotel late at night and, you know, committed a hostile action against the DPRK, which he confessed to. He had a trial at which he had a lawyer defending him, and he was duly sentenced by the DPRK. Now, whilst this might sound harsh, in fact, all foreigners who've been arrested by the DPRK have never ever actually served their entire sentence. They've usually been released before the end of the sentence, and in fact just before the DPRK US summit back in June 2018, the DPRK released a number of US citizens that had been detained for crimes in the DPRK. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you know, it's in Wambier's confession that he was connected to the CIA through a secret society at his university. You know, they'd instructed him or offered him money to steal a revolutionary propaganda slogan from the DPRK and deface it. And, you know, people in the DPRK found his actions deeply offensive. And that is why he faced the full force of DPRK law. And really the tour company that, you know, brought Warmbier into the DPRK should have really told him, you know, not to commit acts like that. But, you know, they didn't. So, you know, I hope that answers that question. I'd also point out that was used as a pretext by Trump to ban US citizens travelling to the DPRK. It's a fact that travel to the DPRK is illegal for US citizens. Okay, does anyone else on the live stream want to ask a question? Because if not, we move on to Alan's lecture.
No more questions.
Well, just say, make sure. Right, on the live stream, people watching on the live Livestream, are there any more questions? Comrade Alan Bollen, Chairman of KFA West of England, KFA UK Organisation Secretary, and also Editor of People's Career Today, who's actually kindly arranged this meeting for us here in Taunton, and he's now going to give a lecture, Workers' Party Korea as the revolutionary vanguard of the Korean working class.
Thank you
So
very
I'll
much.
go over to Alan.
Thank you very much for this short introduction. In my lecture, I will try to give an answer for questions about Workers' Party of Korea. Question: why is revolutionary and what made the revolutionary and vanguard of working class of Korea the party? So, I would say, firstly, let me try to briefly trace the history of creation and development of Workers' Party of Korea. Starting point of Workers' Party of Korea was the creation of ground, or it was in October, and for the subsequent political program of Workers' Party of Korea. Milestone to create vanguard revolutionary communist party on 1930. It is important to emphasize Kim Il-sung and the other partner in just a day after, in the same place in Kowloon, on July 3rd, Comrade Kim Il-sung formed the first party organization within anti-Japanese guerrillas and named it the Society for Laying Comrades. It's the name as there were friends and companions of the guerrilla struggle. Then later on, there was very quick and fast expansion of and rapid emergence of the new basic party cells through the country, which was associated with the fight for liberation from Japanese occupation in anti-Japanese struggle, and also intense and political and agitation work done by Comrade Kim Il-sung. During the anti-Japanese armed struggle, Korean Communist Party organized in March 1932 the Party Committee of the Korean People's Revolutionary Army, the former presidents of the Korean People's Army. Comrade Kim Il-sung in February 1936, meeting with the political and military cadres of the Korean People Revolutionary Army in Nanhuto, laid the political foundation for organizational and ideological principles to build nationwide party. New regional party committees in new areas of the Korean country, East Manchuria in March 1936 and Homeland Party Working Committee late December 1936. Then Party Committee of Changbei County later on in February 1937 being created very fast. All the regional branches quickly formed thanks to the active work of Kim Il-sung and the first party cadets. during this not easy time in anti-Japanese liberation struggle. Another historic significance was forming the Association for the Restoration of the Fatherland by Kim Il-sung 5th of May 1936. This united all social classes in the struggle for liberation with workers and peasants and young anti-Japanese struggle with her popular masses overcome and organize struggle was held in Pyongyang. In this epochal milestone, Comrade Kim Il-sung delivered an important for future political and organizational line report on founding Marxist-Leninist Party in our country and its immediate task. In August 1946, the first Congress of the Workers' Party of Korea strengthened and laid solid foundation for Communist Party of a revolutionary and mass-based character. All of those foundations progressed more in March 1948, when the Second Congress of Workers' Party Korea was held. The Fatherland Liberation War in years 1952 and 1953 was great test of militancy and dedication of Workers' Party of Korea members for all the society. During this period, the party not only fulfilled the important task of organizing People's Army in the fight against the American aggressors, but also on the ideological and propaganda front, mobilizing civilians to work and to increase efforts for quick victory. Workers' Party of Korea came from that period ideologically and organizationally strengthened. After the Fatherland Liberation War, the Workers' Party of Korea activities were characterized by wonderful and unprecedented tempo of socialist construction and the implementation of the anti-feudal and anti-imperialist revolution. During this period, the characteristic revolutionary features of the Workers' Party of Korea strengthened. Workers' Party of Korea took the ambitious task for build socialist state by implementing the free revolution, ideological, technical, and cultural. This time also significant for the development of the socialist thought, in the development of the Juche idea and Songun, for development of the ideological basis of the Korean Revolution, in many works and publications after Comrade Kim Il-jong took over the work in the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea. From those years, one thing can be mentioned: the high pace of economic growth and industrialization of the country, such as Cholima has no precedent in world history. It expresses the success and victory of the revolutionary spirit that was promoted by the Workers' Party of Korea in conditions of peace and effort to rebuild the country and its development, to build the foundation of fully socialist economy, and to implement the agrarian reform quickly. Thanks to Workers' Party of Korea and its work on the organizational and ideological front, powerful and dynamically developing industry was created. Workers' Party of Korea opposed division of Korea and played active role in the efforts for the full reunification of Korea. What can you mention, for example, this program, 10-point program of the great unity of whole nation for the reunification of the country? In external activities of Workers' Party of Korea was the forefront. From the beginning of the 1970s until today, this period can be called period of the development of the philosophy of Juche and Songun, and of determined struggle to defend socialism, especially after the fall of the Eastern Bloc with the USSR. During this period took place 6th, 7th and 8th Epochal Congress of Workers' Party of Korea in January 2021, and of course many conferences with plenary meetings of Central Committee and Political Bureau of the Workers' Party of Korea. I'd like to say a few words about Workers' Party of Korea emblem. The symbol of the Workers' Party of Korea represents a alliance of the three united social classes in building society: hammer, workers; sickle, farmers and peasants; and writing brush, intellectuals and people of intellectual work. The red color in the center symbolizes the revolutionary and mass-based nature of this party, with fighting spirit adequate to the international communist movement. Let us now try to distinguish those characteristics which constitute the revolutionary avant-garde of Workers' Party of Korea. Revolutionary features of Workers' Party of Korea. The first is a relentless bond with the working class in alliance of workers, peasants and intellectuals, relied of the strength of the popular masses skillfully enlisting they create to achieve victory. The determinants of the nature of the Communist Party is its class structure, the Marxist tool of class analysis with regard to social organization and in particular with the regarding to political parties, give us the correct answer on the subject of the real condition of the organization in relation to Marxist-Leninist principles. The loss of the proletarian character is frequent cause of the degeneration of many workers' parties and the departure from the revolutionary struggle in the spirit of Marxist-Leninist and slipping into revisionist or sectarian positions. The working class, proletariat, should constitute at least 2/3 of the class structure as members of a truly revolutionary Communist Party. So, what it looks like Workers' Party of Korea, about 70, no more than 80% of the party class structure is the proletarian, workers' proletarian. No proletarian, farmers, peasants, progressive intellectuals should not be more than 20-25% of the class structure of every political party, which constitute two Marxist-Leninist principles. How does Workers' Party of Korea deal with the situation of overgrowth and disturbance of the balance of the class structure? As 20-25% of intellectual classes, officials or peasants grow in numbers, displace those social classes and cadres in other economic sectors, and employ the method of manual labor for party officials. Ask your party leaders, if you are a member of any communist party, about your party's class structure. Another feature of the revolutionary future of Workers' Party of Korea and militant spirit. Party ideological work is based on democratic centralism. One of them, as Workers' Party of Korea, is the type of Marxist-Leninist Communist Party. In Workers' Party of Korea, its monolithic and centralized structure exists as a ideologically unites all the members in party discipline and in the daily work of basic party cells. In reference to democratic centralism, decisions, conclusions, opinions and views from the bottom of party structure to the top of party structure, and from the top of party structure to the bottom of party structure circulate in the life of the party, and by ensure discipline to the number of members, they absolutely obey the decisions and resolutions of the higher authority, but they have impact on all decisions of the party just because actively abide by democratic socialism, democratic centralism. Militant spirit of Workers' Party of Korea is expressed in the application of the Juche philosophy and to a high degree ideological level ensured by the intensive political work of Workers' Party of Korea. Another feature of revolutionary character of Workers' Party of Korea is anti-imperialism. Workers' Party of Korea undoubtedly has the most anti-imperialist futures in the world. Workers' Party of Korea is guided of the world anti-imperialism movement, and it is the trait that makes it a revolutionary. Anti-imperialism has deep and strong roots in the past and the founding of this party. Workers' Party of Korea always maintained firm and independent line against imperialism, particularly US imperialism. Workers' Party of Korea, led by President Kim Il-sung, rejected the line of capitulation to US imperialism which was advocated by the modern revisionists. In 1962, Workers' Party of Korea adopted the line of building the economy and defense in parallel. This line was later updated and creatively applied as the line of Pyongyang, the line of building the economy and nuclear force in parallel, which was adopted on the plenary meeting of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea in 2013. Under leadership of Workers' Party of Korea, Korean people dealt successive blows to the US imperialists in the Pueblo incident in 1968. EC-121 spy plane shot down in the 1969 and the Panmunjom incident in 1976. At the same time, the Korean people paid great attention to supporting anti-imperialist struggle throughout the world. For example, in those days, in the anti-Japanese armed struggle to Korean revolutionaries support the cause of the Chinese people and also defended the USSR. First workers and peasant state of the USSR. After liberation, the new People's Korea sent its best fighters to assist the Chinese Communist Party and People's Liberation Army liberate China from bureaucratic and reactionary rule of the KMT, Kuomintang regime. In the 1960s, Workers' Party of Korea under President Kim Il-sung put forward the line of anti-US, anti-imperialist struggle. President Kim Il-sung authored works such as Let Us Intensify the Anti-US, Anti-Imperialist Struggle, and also the Great Anti-Imperialist Revolutionary Cause for Asian, African, and Latin American peoples is invincible. President Kim Il-sung pointed out this. It is wrong to try to avoid the struggle against imperialism under the pretext that independence and revolution are important. But that peace is still more precious. It is not true that the line of seeking unprincipled compromise with imperialism only tends to encourage its aggressive actions and increase the danger of war. Peace secured by slavish submission is not peace. Genuine peace cannot be achieved unless struggle is waged against those who break the peace, unless the slave's peace is rejected and the oppressor's rule overthrown. We are opposite to the line of compromise with imperialism. At the same time, we cannot tolerate by practice of only denouncing imperialism, but in actual fact being afraid to fight it. This is a line of compromise in an inverted form. Both have nothing to do with genuine anti-imperialist struggle and only help the imperialist policy of aggression and war. The words said President Kim Il-sung. During the Caribbean crisis of 1962, DPRK stood by Cuba, where the revisionists and big power chauvinists abandoned it. DPRK diplomats and students in Cuba armed themselves ready to fight side by side with the Cuban people. President Kim Il-sung called for international volunteers to be sent to Vietnam and sent the best pilots of the Air Force to the Korean People's Army to Vietnam, as well as tunneling expert crews, plus material assistance as well. During the 1973 October War between the United Arab Republic and the Israel Zionists, a squadron of Korean People's Army pilots was sent to assist the Arab people in their fight against Zionist aggression. President Kim Il-sung also supported the Grenadian Revolution. He had DPRK constructions experts sent to Grenada, and the DPRK gave generous amount of military aid to the People's Revolutionary Government of Grenada. In fact, in per capita terms, DPRK gave more aid to Grenada than the USSR did. DPRK assists national liberation struggles in Algeria, Angola, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, to name a few countries. Another very important feature of revolutionary character of Workers' Party of Korea is anti-revisionist and progressive in dialectical development of Marxist-Leninism. In its political and ideological line, Workers' Party of Korea strongly emphasizes its anti-revisionist character. One of the many examples of the practical defense of the ideals of socialism and the struggle against revisionism and big powerism which emerged between the world communist movement, it was the 1964 First Pyongyang Declaration. In fact, Workers' Party of Korea strongly opposed the modern revisionism, which called Khrushchev revisionism, under the illusion of peaceful coexistence with compromise to the imperialism. This trend later destroyed, as history has shown for us, the Soviet Union. Continuation of this trend in response to the global increase in destruction of the world's socialist camp and so-called political earthquake of the 20th century in the close 1980 and beginning of the 1990s. It was organized and leadership of the second meeting of the World Revolutionary and Progressive Communist Parties, which named Pyongyang Declaration, the second one, in April 20, 1992, in the result of signing by 48 heads and many other delegates of 70 world political parties, which take the Pyongyang Declaration significance. It was in the 20th of April 1992. To this day, many so-called experts and orthodox Marxist-Leninists, along with the deliberate hostile activities of the ideological front, inspired by the enemies of the world communist movement, they spread the false views and lies about the alleged departure and violation of the principles and the values of Marxist-Leninism by Workers' Party of Korea and all DPRK. Of course, there is widespread view, even among the many Marxists or activists of European political parties, of the so-called left wing or modern revisionist. It spread also by the enemy of Western propaganda that the Workers' Party of Korea rejects Marxism-Leninism, turning into some kind of individual cult or another type of revisionism violating the principles of Marxism-Leninism. This view is completely wrong and comes from lack of deeper knowledge and the duplication of lies of Western propaganda. It is very popular topic recently, although not new. I have decided to touch on it and introduce in it a more profound way. The political and ideological line of Workers' Party of Korea arose from Marxism-Leninism and over the decades from the Down with Imperialism Union, the first organization, and Korean Communist Party, which is the former of Workers' Party of Korea. It arose in the process of dialectical development and adaptation of its revolutionary activities to the specific historical and socio-economical conditions of Korea. Every country in the world in the historic process of development of the society has different characteristic style, but guided by main principles of the Marxist-Leninism if they want to stay faithful to Marxist-Leninism. The features of the process of dialectical progress and development are not contradictory to Marxism-Leninism, as many so-called Marxists claims. It is because, for example, Lenin said, we don't regard Marx's theory as something complete and invariable. On the contrary, we are convinced that it has only laid the foundation stone of the science which socialists must develop in all directions if they wish to keep pace with life. This theory provides only general guiding principles, which in particular are applied in England differently than in France. In France differently than Germany, and in Germany differently than Russia. Is from our program, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. This dialectical development, the process that went on the development of Workers' Party of Korea, is the soul and core of true Marxism and Leninism, based on progressive development in adaptation to real reality and objective conditions of Korea. As I mentioned above, many argue otherwise, saying it as a revisionist, nothing more wrong. Because another example, Lenin said, our teaching is not a dogma, but guide to action. Marx and Engels always used to say, rightly ridiculing the learning and repetition by rote of formulas, which as best are only capable of outlining general tasks that are necessarily liable to be modified by the concrete economic and concrete political conditions of each separate phase of the historical process. Unstateable true that Marxists must take cognizance of real life, of the concrete realities, and must not continue to cling to a theory of the yesterday. It is from collected works, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. In the Juche idea, and Kim Il-sung's, Kim Il-jong's Marxism, Leninism is just guide to action. The Juche idea, which is the official ideology of Workers' Party of Korea, does not refute Marxism-Leninism in any way and retains its basic principles as guidelines for the progressive development of Korean society in new historical, social and economic conditions adapted to the present time, because for it is not a revisionism to introduce such additions to the science of Marxism that reflect the reality of life or changed life. It is, however, a revisionist to introduce new theoretical principles into the science of Marxism when those principles don't correspond to the possibilities of shaping life in accordance with the predications contained in them. They are not in accordance with the laws governing social development. That quote is from a book named Political Thought of Marxism and Revisionism. This is the pure soul of Marxism-Leninism in its dialectical development in history. Dialectic development is expressed precisely in the new corresponding to the historical, social and economic conditions of the DPRK. The progress of ideological thought in the Workers' Party of Korea, while maintaining all the basic principles of Marxism-Leninism. We can find such a dictatorship of the proletariat, we can find democratic centralism, we can find socialist collectivization, etc. So basic principles are still there. As the Marxist-Leninist dialectic explains, in the dialectical process of the development of nature, the laws of the nature operate in a mutual struggle for better quality, in mutual clash and in the creation of new and better forms, in the same way and in history only at slower pace. The same dialectical process takes place in the development of societies, from the first feudal and primitive through the capitalism to socialism. Development of the Marxist-Leninist thought in this process, which took place in the ideological struggle of the Workers' Party of Korea, didn't stop as in many European parties on the dogmas and historical limitation of Marxist-Leninism as is in the European parties. This row went further in the progressive spirit of Marxist-Leninism and gave new epochal philosophy, which is Juche, then Songun, then Kim Il-sungis and Kim Il-jongis. So we can ask, what is the revisionism? What is the opportunism? There are many sources to explain, from the Marxist literature, books or classics of works written by activists of the communist movement, explaining the essence of revisionism. Let's to use a few. Question, can you tell me who read History of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Bolshevik short course?
Stalin.
Who read that? Is anybody read?
Yeah, I've read it.
Right. That is one of the first explanation of the concept of the revisionism and opportunism. Opportunism does not always mean a direct denial of the Marxist theory or of any of its propositions and conclusions. Opportunism is sometimes expressed in the attempt of the cling to certain of the propositions of Marxism that have already become antiquated and to convert them into a dogma so as to retard the further development of Marxism and, consequently, to retard the development of the revolutionary movement of the proletariat. There is another one, much more quickly, much more simple. Revisionism is nothing more than a sediment of error arising in the development process of Marxist theory. Is from political force of Marxism and revisionism. Such a deposit of error was and is still in the reform theories, modern revisionists of the social democratic parties of modern European and all kinds of dogmatism, factionalism, opportunism. We can say Workers' Party of Korea remains unshakable of the frontiers of the revolutionary practice of Marxist-Leninism, is away from the errors of reformism and all revisionist distortions with the creative development of Marxist-Leninist thought under the conditions of the Korean socialist revolution. Thus, as we can say, the one of the first definition of revisionism presented from those of the books on subject to explanation what is revisionism is inadequate. It is not contradiction, is not inadequate to the political line and ideology of the Workers' Party of Korea, which is based on the Juche philosophy, which is ideology which is based on the present more adapted to Korean reality. Juche idea and Kim Il-sungis, Kim Il-jongis create on Juche idea is in progress and dialectical development in reflecting the real objective conditions of the material world and its development. It's not a revisionist trend that contradicts Marxism, it is development in the line with the spirit of Marxism as it is in its essence. The truly Marxist process of dialectical development is precisely the historical and of the ideology of the Workers' Party of Korea itself, based on its over the decades as we can show on the graphics. This is showing us dialectical progress of development of Marxist-Leninism regarding the Workers' Party of Korea. The next graphic showing expressed exactly to ideological and organizational line of Workers' Party of Korea.
Not sure if the mic will pick that up there.
As we see from the Marxist-Leninist and experiences of anti-Japanese struggle, Juche Island been created. In many decades been created Juche Island Songi. From Songun and Juche idea, we have Kim Il-sung's Kim Il-jung's. This shows evolution in the dialectical process of development. And many parties on the European or saying revisionism. Admittedly, Marxist philosophy plays on the understanding of man on citing biases, but this understanding has historical limitation. That historical limitation arose with the development of societies over the decades that dissolved the Juche and Kim Il-jung's. Marxist-Leninism defined man as a sum of total social relation. I didn't seek the essence of the man. The essences of the man are exposed widely in the Juche philosophy and Kim Il-sung's, Kim Il-jung's, which are the official ideologies of the Workers' Party of Korea. And also, it is an originally revolutionary future of the Workers' Party of Korea. It shows progressiveness and dialectical development of Marxist-Leninism regarding to the conditions of the Korean Revolution. So we see how in its progressiveness and dialectical development of Marxist-Leninism, which is one of the features that characterize the revolutionary nature of Workers' Party of Korea, this party strongly rooted in the Marxist theory of historical dialectic has mastered it brilliantly and creatively as quoting. Mastering the Marxist-Leninist theory means being able to enrich this theory with the new experiences of the revolutionary movement, with new propositions, with new conclusions. It means being able to develop and advance it without hesitating to replace in accordance with the substance of that theory such of its propositions and conclusions as have become antiquated by new ones corresponding to the new historical situation. The Marxist-Leninist theory is not a dogma, but as guide to the action. From History of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, Bolshevik short course. Workers' Party of Korea enrich Marxist-Leninism in historical development of Korean objective conditions for revolutionary Juche philosophy and wider to Songun and Kim Il-sung's, Kim Il-jung's indeed. However, it should be remembered that Juche and Kim Il-sung's, Kim Il-jung's is an independent philosophy, not simple developed from Marxist-Leninism, but guided by them, and it does not oppose and does not contradict anything from Marxism-Leninism, but only overcomes historical limitation and puts at the center of the revolution man as a subject and not as an object, as in Marxism-Leninism has in the limitation. In the use, the very simple example is water and steam. Is steam still water in the substance? Yes, it is. In the texture? No, it's not. The same is Juche and Marxism-Leninism. Juche is expand of the Marxism-Leninism as a steam. Process, dialectical process, the same laws everywhere in nature, in historical, in the development of societies, and in nature everywhere. That's what we believe as a communist. Workers' Party of Korea is the creative and progressive organization which developed Marxist-Leninist thought in the historical and dialectical process of development of the socialist revolution under Korean conditions, expressed in the emergence of the Juche philosophy and its development of Kim Il-sung's, Kim Il-jong's, is valuable and lasting achievement for the entire world communist movement. It is an expression of the revelation and vitality of Marxism-Leninism, which is the soul of Marxism-Leninism dialectical process from the worse to better, from the Marxist-Leninist theory and not revisionist as many think, and they also claim that. Another feature of a revolutionary characteristic of Workers' Party of Korea is ideological and political work. The way and regulation of social life in the DPRK, which have been successively introduced by Workers' Party of Korea, allow all citizens of the country, not only Workers' Party of Korea members, to lead a full, sustainable life, full balanced life. What does it mean? It means that the popular masses living in the DPRK try to use a balanced method in their everyday life and routine. Regarding this, Comrade Kim Il-sung set for Korean society full balanced lifestyle with 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours to study. The high discipline in the self-education of the members of Workers' Party of Korea translates into constantly increasing quality of life. According to the Juche philosophy, members of Workers' Party of Korea in self-education and also in participation in party training conduct in ideological and political work by Workers' Party of Korea, trigger their creativity and increase consciousness, socialist consciousness in transforming the world for their own good, as man being master of the world. Let's have a short summary now of the revolutionary futures of Workers' Party of Korea. We can say that Workers' Party of Korea, the path that been traveled in the history of the Workers' Party of Korea, we can say is really glorious path from the first organization of the resistance movement against the Japanese invaders down with the imperialist union, which was the first organization, through the growth in the anti-revisionist struggle to the consolidation into strong and exemplary organized communist party of the Marxist-Leninist new type. Through the decades, Workers' Party of Korea has toughened its combat character in its revolutionary struggle with all manifestation of opportunism, flunkeyism, dogmatism, and in the fight against internal and external enemies. Workers' Party of Korea is a party of eternal leader Kim Il-sung and great leader Kim Jong-il, who create an organizational for the masses of the people, organization for all masses united people. Is a party undoubtedly of the vanguard of the Korean people, but also is the party of the Korean people's masses embraces the progressive elements from among the Korean working class in alliance of the workers, farmers and intellectuals. Workers' Party of Korea grew out of the liberation struggle and experiences of Korean labor movement, which skillfully combined the two ideological streams, two ideological currents. The currents, the streams dominate its socialist consciousness. On those foundations, Workers' Party of Korea was guided and carried by the revolutionary of Juche philosophy, which is the quintessence of the Korean road to socialism. I strongly encourage you to study history of Workers' Party of Korea, the history of the heroic way of national and social liberation, and victories on the way of building socialist people's welfare state. Studying the history of the Workers' Party of Korea development also gives you the knowledge of the loves of the social development, the knowledge of the political struggle in the liberation of the working class, and thus the knowledge of the driving forces of the revolution. In this lecture, I have only outlined in the general framework just briefly the subject, the topics, the basic features of the Workers' Party of Korea, and prove the revolutionary and originality of this political party. Both the enormous historical experience of the long-term process of building socialism in the Korean style and the daily practice of the revolution are much, much richer than my lecture. Therefore, I strongly encourage you to study and learn about the revolutionary experience and practice of the great party of the world communist movement, which is undoubtedly Workers' Party of Korea. Thank you very much for listening my lecture.
Thank you very much, Alan, for a very comprehensive talk on the Workers' Party of Korea and its vanguard role, its role as the general staff of the Korean Revolution. And of course, the Workers' Party of Korea is a party that punches above its weight in the international communist movement. As Alan said, it was the Workers' Party of Korea which created the Pyongyang Declaration, let us defend and advance the cause of socialism in 1992. A crucial point in time where the USSR had collapsed and many people were in a state of disillusion or confusion, disorientation. The Workers' Party of Korea took that initiative. Workers' Party of Korea has always maintained strong independence according to the Juche idea and has always been anti-revisionist. Now I'm just going to amplify quickly two of the points Comrade Alan made. Earlier on in the lecture he talked about economic growth in the DPRK in the 1950s. This was indeed truly phenomenal. Economic growth actually reached 36% per year in the late 50s, which is quite
You cannot find the growth like that.
You can't.
I don't think so.
I mean, the other high economic growth rate I heard was for the USSR in the Stalin period of 20%, but that actually exceeded that. And the fact, some people don't believe this story, but they were able to build one flat in every 14 minutes in the DPRK in that period. And it was, known as the Chilima speed. Chilima being a legendary flying horse that can fly a big distance in a day. And that was the name given to the creative innovation movement in the DPRK in that period. And of course you got the Chilima statue in Pyongyang. And Alan has sort of touched on an important fact. Not only does DPRK face attacks from the mainstream media, from bourgeois academics and so-called specialists, but some ultra-leftists and some dogmatists are quick to attack the DPRK on ultra-left grounds, saying, oh, it's sold out, and oh, they haven't done this, oh, they shouldn't have done that, or on the grounds of pure dogmatism, idea that
Dogmatism is the stop on the limitation what was.
Yeah.
Everyone want to compare everything to USSR, but they don't know that the Marxism is the soul of the Marxism is developing.
Yeah.
That's what I prove of my quotation of the books. Is not contradiction to develop Marxism-Leninism. We have to be faithful to the principles, of course, which they are, but we are bringing new thoughts. We bring in something new to enrich that theory. That's Juche idea.
Absolutely. And, I'll sort of just conclude my remarks here. There's a sort of little booklet available. Unfortunately, I haven't got it on the back table because he sold all the copies of it, called Understanding the Workers' Party of Korea. But I've got that on PDF on my Google Drive, and, I can share it to anyone who wants it. It's a very good little booklet, packs a lot of information in a small...
On the West of England branch on Facebook, there is online library. That book is there. It will be free. There is plenty of stuff. My lecture was based also on this book, so you can find plenty.
And we'll be publishing the lecture. Now, what I'd like to do, if you'd like to sort of say a few words on behalf of KFA Netherlands to the meeting and to the live stream, and then we're going on to questions and answers.
All right, that's fine. So, maybe, yeah. So, thank you for having me here. Well, I'm one of the newest delegations of KFA, and that's the Netherlands. And I was appointed as chairman recently, but there's not really much like guidance on how you can start a new association, and the most people that were member, they have now disappeared, and I'm trying to find those people again, but that's that's not that easy. So to get some more ideas, I decided to come down to the United Kingdom, and I thought that maybe that would be a great idea, because then I can meet Comrade Dermot Hudson, who has a lot of experience. And so I made a lot of notes in my papers here, and I'm going. When I get back in the Netherlands, I will go work on all these points and try to build back the KFA in the Netherlands. When I came here, I was surprised to see so many people that were homeless, that were begging, and hooligans and all kinds of that kind of stuff. But it's probably the same in Amsterdam, even though I haven't visited yet, but I heard these stories, so I can assume that they are real. Well, that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you very much, Comrade Marcel, for those remarks. We're honoured here to have a representative of KFA Netherlands here, and we're willing to host, within reason, other KFA delegations from other countries who may wish to visit the UK and participate directly in person in our events. And just again, picking up on a point raised about by Marcel, yeah, I mean, the area where he's staying in has many homeless. And in fact, it's not as bad as some areas in the UK.
Yeah.
There's places much worse than that. And, you know, I remember being on a delegation to the DPRK a few years ago, and your comrades from Staffordshire KFA said, oh, the great thing about the DPRK, you got no homeless, no drug addicts, no prostitutes, no lumpens. You don't see lumpens in the DPRK. You know, it's a great thing. It's a real, true socialist society, and you know, it's a society going forward. What I do, as people have put questions on the live stream, which have been, you know, knocking around for about an hour, I'll try and take the questions up. I don't know if you can
You click on them.
try and
Show.
go up a bit. There was an earlier one that let's try and. Here we are. How will North Korea adapt to the new economic challenges that the world is facing? Bit of a wide-ranging question, and I say we don't refer to North Korea. We talk about People's Korea, Juche Korea, or Socialist Korea, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, DPRK for short. I'm not sure which kind of economic challenges referring to, whether it's the fallout from COVID-19, whether it's the increase in energy prices in some countries, or the increase in food prices. A simple answer is by self-reliance. At the 7th Congress of the Workers' Party Korea, held in January 2021, respected Marshal Kim Jong-un, the General Secretary of the Workers' Party of Korea, strongly stressed self-reliance and self-development. DPRK has built an independent national economy, and it will continue to do so, and it will continue to deepen the independence. And say, don't forget, you know, the DPRK has not built socialism under ideal conditions, but under conditions of economic blockade by the US and even the UN, and also, you know, it shut its borders back in January 2020. It survived more than 2 years with the borders closed. And, you know, in this country, there was a panic over Brexit. You know, they were saying, ooh, we're going to have food shortages, there won't be any food in the shops, you know. It's a fact that some countries, even so-called very developed capitalist countries, perhaps wouldn't survive beyond 2 or 3 days with their borders shut. But the DPRK's been able to survive this long with the borders closed. And it's down to self-reliance. It produces many of the goods it needs at home. And I remember being in the DPRK 3 years ago, 2019, and someone who was there, I wouldn't say he was particularly strong or sort of gung-ho supporter of the DPRK. He said, well, the thing about the DPRK, you know, is they produce a lot of their own stuff. Certain countries, in fact, I'll name them, Cuba and Venezuela, don't produce much. They have to import a hell of a lot of stuff, very vulnerable to both blockades and also to problems in the world, wider world economy, like cyclical downturns and recessions and so on. So, you know, the DPRK will stick to the line of self-reliance, and that will enable it to withstand you know, the challenges ahead, because, yeah, I think it's going to be quite a grim decade ahead. I hope that sort of answers the points. Someone's asked about the old horse chestnut of the JCP, the Japanese Communist Party. And what is your opinion about the JCP? Why, in a word, revisionist. as simple as that. Just to try and give a sort of potted history, originally the Japanese Communist Party and the Workers' Party of Korea had very good relations, very close relations. Both upheld the line of independence in the international communist movement. But whereas the DPRK was guided by a principled revolutionary ideology, Japanese Communist Party fell into revisionism, and unfortunately it started to take on positions that were actually advocated by the Japanese state and by Japanese imperialism, and it increasingly attacked the DPRK, and some of the reasoning was very imperialistic. They attacked the DPRK for enforcing, a maritime border, because Japanese fishing boats were going into DPRK waters and fishing, and the so-called Japanese Communist Party actually criticised the DPRK for asserting its sovereignty and protecting the livelihoods of its people, and this was their line. So they became.
I would say also from the regard to the ideological line. If you look, as I said in my lecture, use the tool of the Marxist-Leninist theory to Japanese Communist Party and look into class structure of the members. They show you everything, and it's to every part under whichever it is. They show you there is revisionist or not. If the more is than 20-25% of the class structure, no proletarian classes like owners, bourgeois, petty bourgeois, or different, they show you black and white. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Well,
this is very useful class tool for Marxist-Leninists. Have a look on the class structure society of the members. They show you everything.
Right.
And I don't think so. The Japanese Communist Party is the proletariat.
Yeah. Well, I'm
maybe on the few percent.
I'm
still, but don't think so.
I'm not sure about that. But what I do know is they adopted very chauvinist positions, and I think also objected to Korean residents living in Japan organising themselves, very chauvinist positions.
Many factors showing you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I gather there was talk of reconciliation between the JCP and the WPK, but that never happened. So, to conclude the answer, in short, we regard it as revisionist, anti-DPRK, and basically frankly, been a lot of what the left in imperialist countries is, they act as a sort of mouthpiece for imperialism, but from a left position, and it's something we could talk about all day on. Now, there's a question about presidents, great leaders, President Kim Il-sung, Chairman Kim Jong-il, and to sort answer the question, when we say they're alive, what we mean is they're alive in the hearts and minds of the masses, of the people of the DPRK, and their ideas and lines are being carried out by
the
DPRK. So that's what it means when it says they are alive. That's what it means. And the ideas they created were very great and led to very great things. So they live on in the reality of people's career. And there's a question from someone in your country about weapons in the DPRK. First thing to understand is the population of the DPRK are armed. That is under the self-defensive policy of the Workers' Party of Korea. There is a civilian militia, the Worker Peasant Red Guard. Lots of people are members of it. Exists to defend workplaces in the event of an invasion. There's also the Red Young Guards, which is for very young people. And yeah, I have actually been, when I was in the DPRK in 2017, we did spot civilians with weapons at bus stops, because that was a very tense time. If you remember, Donald Trump had talked about fire and fury would be unleashed on the DPRK, so they were ready. You know, there is legislation or regulations about carrying about the use of weapons in the DPRK. You know, you can't go into a supermarket and buy one gun and get one free.
No,
You know, you're not meant to sort of carry guns around unnecessarily. If there's an emergency situation, people will arm themselves, but in normal times, you know, the guns are kept at home. And yes, there are sporting clubs in the DPRK where people can shoot. There is the very, you can look the video up on YouTube, there is the Mirai firing range where you can, both Koreans and foreign visitors can go and fire guns. And you know, there is a video of, well, in fact there's more than one video of it, and I used to have a little picture album of it. And again, when the DPRK opens its borders, and if you get the chance to go to the DPRK, yeah, we're back again. Slight difficulty. We, you know, say we're using Wi-Fi in another location. I hope that answered the question about firearms in the DPRK. It's a question about, is a Duce party of the UK an option to be considered on the British political scene? Well, this has been talked about, you know, several times before. I would say it's not an option. Efforts should instead be channeled into building the Korean Friendship associations and Juche study groups. I think trying to form a political party based on the Juche idea in Britain at this stage would be counterproductive. And, you know, at the moment, you know, there's people who don't like the fact we have KFA, don't like the fact we have a Juche study group. Imagine they would be even more up in arms if we sort of said, oh, we're founding the Juche Communist Party. As I say, I don't consider it an option, and, you know, people are better off working to build the Korean Friendship Association and to study the Juche idea for the Juche idea study group. And the thing about KFA, we're not just one party. We got people from different parties in it and people from no party. And that's the thing, you know, if people want to belong to a communist party and fight for socialism in their country, you know, they should do it basically. But as I say, we're not trying to create a separate, another political party here. I hope that sort of answers the question from the live stream. Anyone else on the live stream like to ask a question? We can take a few more questions, but please go ahead and do so quickly. Are there any questions from the floor?
Maybe Chris one question.
Do you have any anything you want to sort of add?
All right.
Right. Just call, as say again, if there's any more questions from the live stream, hope people can actually hear us after that break in communication. If there's any more questions from the live stream, please put them now, and we take them up, because we probably sort of close down
just
the live stream in
just to
about...
briefly say, both of the lectures will be available on the People's Korea Today June issue, which will be published there on the article section. 2nd, 3rd of June will be new issue People's Korea Today. Both of the lectures will be there if someone would like to look into it.
Yeah, and I'll be publishing my lecture on
and also different
on the blog,
Facebook.
and we'll be publishing Alan's lectures as well. So, you know,
we can find it on
so
our pages.
be widely available to people. Right. I haven't missed any questions.
And also too is important to say, if someone would like to give us any subject to organize any seminar on any topic, please go forward. Send the email, contact to us. What would you like to see, what would you like to hear about DPRK? Which topic would you like to expand more, prepare in the lecture? Please go on. We are open for any proposition, anything from the members, no members also. Everyone is valuable to us. Everyone if like to say anything about what we want to hear about DPRK, please go forward, send us email, contact to us, give a proposition, we organize, especially on the topic what you like. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alan. Okay, we'll just give people on the live stream a chance to ask questions, and just check that the live stream is working. The live stream's working. I was a bit worried that it cut off. People watching on the live stream, you've got 5 more minutes to put questions. We wait for 5 minutes and then I'm going to start making sort of concluding remarks. I don't know if you want to say anything more, add a few more remarks.
Not really.
Alan, do you want to add anything else?
Well, we have poetry evening today. So
That's right, yeah. Yes, we have the 5th KFA Poetry and Literary Evening tonight, 7 o'clock, and that's via a Skype link.
Me and Dr. Dermot will be together today because he's visiting Towton. 7 p.m. I'd like to invite everyone to Poetry and Literary Evening KFA UK. There will be some nice poems. Also, Dr. Dermot will read some of the work of Kim Il-sung on the century.
With the century.
With the century, sorry. Yeah, and prepare the two poems, minimum 2 poems. Maybe someone will prepare some more. So 7 o'clock, would like to join us online.
Yeah, that's on Facebook. Anyway, to conclude, we've heard 2 presentations today. One about the lies of the mainstream media, about the DPRK, and a very detailed and comprehensive lecture about the Workers' Party career vanguard of revolutionary vanguard of the Korean working class, and I think both presentations were very good. Our task in KFA UK is to defend the DPRK. The hostility has not gone away. It's still there. It may well have been put on given a slightly lower priority because of the war against Russia in the Ukraine. But, it's inevitable, I think, at some point that the tension between the DPRK and US will erupt, and, again, there will be a lot of propaganda against the DPRK. And, of course, like I said, it's not gone away. It's what you call it's running in the background, as it were. You can still find tons of anti-DPRK stuff. And, we in the KFA UK, we're committed to countering it through events like these, through meetings, through live streams, and all sorts of different events. So we appeal to people to join us, join the fight to defend people's career. Is the most independent country in the world. Even John Major admitted that during the 2016 referendum, in which he referred to the DPRK as an example of a country with undiluted independence. And although that was intended as a sort of jibe, a sneer against the DPRK, I think that summed up the DPRK very well. It's a country with undiluted independence, genuine independence. It's a country going its own way. It's a country that's rejected globalization, the attempts to create a monolithic world around American imperialism and flood the world with American culture. And I'm not boasting. I'm a fairly experienced traveller. I started travelling a bit late in life when I was 27. Been to many countries, seen how the US have quite a strong hold over them. How they dominate other countries. How you go to other countries. You will see McDonald's there, KFC there. You'll see American music there, all kinds of things. Go to people's career. You will not see McDonald's. You will not see KFC. You will not see foreign-owned banks in the DPRK, and you will see a national culture. It's based on the realities of Korea, and you will see a true socialist system. DPRK has maintained real socialist principles, and as Alan's saying, it's anti-revisionist as well. It's anti-imperialist. You've got genuine socialism in the DPRK. So, please join us in our fight to defend people's Korea. Thank you for listening. And just before I close the live stream, we've got a publishing program on lulu.com. We've got a number of publications written by myself, but not just me. We've got some that are written collectively, some written by other KFA UK activists, so it's not just all about me. We're also going to publish a book on the Dutch idea. Alan, would you like to?
I think it takes a couple of weeks to do the last job for that, for me. Couple of weeks there will be a book about Dutch idea, a study, seminar study where we had online. Every part of them will be enriched by graphics, enriched by wider, expanded, and some pictures, some graphics, colorful graphics, history of the DPRK, quite useful. I think that will be big work and quite useful. But as I said, it needs a couple of weeks more, and I will be sent to Lulu. They will publish that printed out. So let's give it like a few weeks more, and we present the new book from hours work, me and Dr. Dermot together working for this book.
Right, thank you very much, Alan. And, in June, we'll probably hold some online meetings. We aim for a real life meeting and possibly a live stream for the 69th anniversary of the victory in the Great Fatherland Liberation War, which is on the 27th of July. Thank people on the live stream for watching. We're going to end now, and the video will be available on YouTube. So thank you for your attention. I will close that down now. So it's goodbye from KFA UK, KFA West of England, and KFA Netherlands from Taunton. Thank you for your attention. Have a great day.